Thank you very much, muito obrigado, for this fascinating talk. So whoever would like to ask a question, most welcome to do it. And you can grab then the microphone and ask your question. So yes, please, Father Gregory.
Thank you very much, Professor Osswald, for your lecture with fresh insights for me, and also based on sound scholarship. Now, a few of the paintings, like Jesuit martyrs, this is the first time I've seen them. I saw them the first time that I see them. Martyrs of 52 Christians, then the 3 Jesuit martyrs, the details of the Kurofune. For me, it's the first time. Very, for me, it's really enlightening. So I thank you. The death of Francis Xavier and so on. Now, you mentioned about the ruins of St. Paul as so unique, showing the majesty, so majestic, yes, as compared with the in Goa. Now, of course, many people say this is a stonework of praise to God, with various gestures. Now, my question is, compared with the other churches, let's say Goa or other churches in Japan, from your research, what is so unique, of these ruins of St. Paul in Macau? Because you mentioned about this maxim, remember the dead, and you will not sin. For me, that is, oh wow, this, you pick that, no? Now, in other photos, perhaps in your research, maybe you have come across certain dictums or certain devotional paintings that might strike you. Perhaps my question is a bit vague, but really thank you again for your enlightening talk.
Well, thank you for your comments. I think it's Macau. It's really unique. This church is really unique. Well, you can, if you think, of course, of the Jesuit or of the Catholic churches in South America, like Bolivia, like Chiquitos, and that kind. They can be also very imposing, but I don't think they have this dense message as Macau, and certainly not the Jesuit churches in India. And Japan is different. There are no, well, they were destroyed, and most of those churches that were built in Japan, we know them only from letters, from documents, and from the biombos, from the screens. And well, so they were constructed from the beginning to be provisional, okay? And often they were constructed to be hidden, they were constructed to be more only a cross distinguish them from the Buddhists or from the temples. And so it's really a very different context.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm a bit curious about some churches that you shown have a very massive bell tower, but in case of Macau,
very massive. Sorry?
The bell tower.
Ah, okay, yeah. Yeah.
In Macau, I don't know if it had or it fell, or is there any archaeological survey that shows that it had, or is there a typology of facade or church that we can divide the ones with bell tower and the ones without bell tower?
This is an excellent point. Actually, the first churches of St. Paul had bell towers. This is, so generally speaking, bell towers are very Portuguese, and no bell towers, at least at the time, was very Italian. And so St. Paul, for instance, had double, two sides. São Paulo, Goa, okay, and Macau had a bell tower, one. And this is a Portuguese, well, generally speaking, a Portuguese element. For instance, Bom Jesus didn't have, never have had a bell tower. Okay, so this is an excellent point. Thank you.
Then may I then add, we have you as a really outstanding expert on Goa among us, and I would like to ask you a question. We have here in Macau also buildings, art with Goa kind of characteristics. And I learned the special red would be a characteristic of Goa. Could the color of red, the red color is something specific of
no.
Could you also correct maybe this mistake or yeah.
No, actually the red you see in Bom Jesus, this is bassin stone. Actually, you have which was well, it's here it's a little bit a very lighty picture, but in this case is why? Because the churches in Goa, they were stuccoed, they were whitewashed, okay, and the Bom Jesus, well, there is a discussion about this between Valignano and the Patras in Goa, which stone to use. And well, and at the end he won because he didn't used to lose a lot. And the stone, the red stone, is better stone came from, and the granite came from Bassein, from the north of India. And why? Because it's well, this is the way the churches should look like. Okay, white, stuccoed, whitewashed. Yeah, this was the conception. We know, for instance, that the statues, the sculptures, they are in bronze, and they were depicted, and golden, of course. Of course, this is everything has erased. But the colors, it's always very problematic. And of course, normally you use the local stone, right? In the case of Goa, as it was, especially in the case of the Bom Jesus, as it was really the very important church, the main church, they extra, meaning Valignano, had the stone coming from Bassein, which was considered of better quality.
There is one question from Europe, actually, from Maria Maciejewska. She is making a comment, and I will read it, and there is a question inside. Thank you for the fantastic lectures and greetings from Europe. I have a specific question. I'm editing a Jesuit play from 1677. It includes metaphorical prologue, personificate Japan and India, see a column that was inscribed many years ago by Saint Thomas. The text says that salvation is near, at the foreign priest will come. Soon a ship with Saint Francis Xavier arrives. I wonder if this column is just the author's imagination or it's based on a real life monument.
Well, the Jesuits certainly it's not Macau or Goa, but maybe the author could have inspired either in Il Jésus or later in Saint Ignacio, when and if you consider especially Saint Ignacio with all this, again, this Baroque discourse, maybe it could have something to do with this. You can establish some connection between art and theater. indeed, all this discourse of lawishness, and when the first time I went to Goa, I was really struck by the dimension of the churches, because if I compare them to Portugal, they are much more bigger. And why? Because they had to convert, and they had to impose themselves, and a way is through majestic, with this triumphant perspective of religion. So this idea of column, I think, yes, why not? Yeah, this is a good point, by the way.
From Natsu. Thank you very much for the interesting talk and slides. I'm a Japanese participant living in the UK. Japan is keen about UNESCO World Heritage. Are those churches or ruins, if not currently used for worshipping, inscribed for UNESCO World Heritage? What is a scope for the future?
Which churches in Japan? Well, they are not extant. I mean, they just don't exist, most of them. So
yes, they don't exist
anymore.
And
I mean, also Nagasaki, the Urakami, it was destroyed lastly by the bomb. It was rebuilt much later. So
one more comment from Cristina Juan. Greetings from London. Thank you for this very interesting lecture. I was wondering if you have included the role of Manila and the Jesuits-based Manila in the art of Macau.
Yes, actually, I didn't speak about this, but this is a very good point, the Galleon de Manila. Why? Because I know that for especially the Archangel Saint Michael is often considered to have also influences from Philippine, from Hispanic art. And we know, or I know, I found reference to documents about the circulation, the import of Fedor pictures made in Manila, and then that came to Macau, and that came even to Brazil. So it's really a very global world. And another very important aspect about the Sanglais, the Chinese artists who went to Manila, and also, well, I didn't speak of Manila because it would be too vast. But still, these Sanglais, these Chinese artists, they went to Manila. We know some of the names. And so this is really very global stuff. Another aspect, and this is also a reason I didn't mention that much, or I didn't mention at all Manila or the Hispanic context. Why? Because I'm focused on the Jesuits. And what happens is that the Japanese Jesuits, the Japanese missionaries, some Kiddish or many Kiddishitan, reigned mostly or escaped to Macau, especially the ones connected to the Jesuits, because the Jesuits were connected to the Portuguese crown, whereas the Franciscans, they escaped mostly and to Manila, and then often to Nueva España, to Mexico. But of course, it's absolutely correct. And exactly this, if you compare this image to the paintings of the angels in Bolivia, they are very similar somehow. There are really similarities, and it has to do with the galleon. Yeah.
The previous person, Natsu, was wondering about the ruins and the churches in Macau, not those in Japan.
Yes, this is World Heritage. Yes.
Some time ago, a master degree student from University of Macau has written a thesis concerning the reconstruction of St. Bart's. in Macau. So what do you think about this idea?
I couldn't understand. Somebody has written a thesis about the ruins. Yeah. Well, there are several students and several scholars who have been dealing in special with these ruins. Yeah. And well, I consider Gonçalo Conceiro and Guillen the most well-known ones. But of course, there are other people working on that. Yeah. Sure.
Excellent, excellent. Don't need to say it again because you know already. You mentioned about the 4 levels in the facade, no? And I didn't get it if it is an Indian influence or was part of the original
From
plan.
my
And if it is an Indian, what are the meaning of the 4 levels? Probably you can say a little bit about that.
I think it's well, you see, 1, 4, 3, 4, and the gable, and with the gable, because to give this impression of majesty, this is really also a very well, this 4-storied structures. This is something very Indian, and if you consider that Spinola came came via Goa, why not? Why not to establish here a link between these two? And he visited churches. He stayed around 1 year in India, so he had the time to get an impression of local architecture, of local art. That's the point. And plus this somehow oro vacui, which curiously is not that present, at least with this course. We have a little bit of this in Diu. It's north of Goa, but really not. It's not that impressive as Macau. No, you see, of course, you see, yes, but the point is that, oh, yes, you see other Baroque facades around the world, which have 4 floors, okay. But here in this specific case, I wasn't the one who, this case wasn't a discovery of mine, but I agree on that this can have this sense of majesty can somehow be linked to India. This combination of majesty and horror vacui, that means this horror for emptiness, can be somehow related to the Indian context. Yeah.
Few more comments from Spain. I was wondering if you could, she would have information about churches in the inland mission of China by the Jesuits, or the reproduction of these models in the inland mission.
Yes, I have information, but I'm not here. I have some information, yes, about that.
Okay, from Joan Zrosza, I just read the question. As you pointed out at the beginning of the 17th century, the question is about Japanese artifacts. At the beginning of the 7th century, under Tokugawa shogunate, churches were destroyed and artifacts confiscated. However, letters describe that some artifacts were taken to Macau, Goa, Manila. During your research, have you crossed with those artifacts? Can you distinguish between artifacts made as gifts and those that were actually used in Japanese churches?
Yes, for sure. Actually, this is also a very good point. For instance, this Truva Nicola, he depicted various Salvator Mundi, and some and one was probably given was taken to Macau by Ricci to the emperor. And of course, this has another dimension. The ones, as you can imagine, of course, it's no longer extant, but we have the documentary evidence. And but he made also pictures, better said, he made engravings. So for Japan, for obvious reasons, engravings or small pictures were preferred. And once I was collaborating in a catalog, and it was about a small Saint Sebastian in ivory. And then I considered it would be in the kind of Portuguese. And then reading and watching, and then at the end I thought, no, this is Japanese. Why? Because of the because of the iconography, especially because of the size. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. And the last comment from before we give opportunity for more questions. One comment, the last comment from Netherlands, Jeren Lammers. I enjoyed your talk very much, especially the part about the model circulated from Rome and the extraordinary rich decoration of the facade of the church in Macau. Best regard. And okay, and the last question, are you familiar with biombos that were made in Macau during this period?
Yes, also, yes. Biombos were made in Macau, biombos were made in Japan, and in the biombos, yeah, by the Japanese artists, yeah.
Would you have any thoughts or comments on the relationship between the churches in Macau and those in Beijing?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I didn't, because it was not my topic today, and this is already waste enough. And in Beijing, it's clearly a late discourse, a Baroque discourse, as you know. Beijing is another, is also quite different from what I was dealing here, because I was concentrating on the first 100 years. And Beijing, the churches in Beijing are practically, they start being constructed, built, decorated from that point onwards. This is one aspect. The other aspect is here we are speaking, of course, Beijing at least was, the first mission was related to the Portuguese crown, but not the second mission, right? They were related to the Mission Étrangère, to the French. So it's quite, they are quite different, and it was not my aim to work on that in this point, okay? Because they're really quite different, different context. Even if some, of course, some of the artists, I spoke about Ricci, and some of the artists who have been here, of course, they have been here in Macau and they went to Beijing, but it's really, it's another subject. Oh.
Anything you would like to say in terms of comparing St. Paul and St. Joseph Seminary? They are Jesuit buildings, both of them, but very different.
Yes.
So
again, because Follery, and why it's Follery, it's more like with Beijing, because it's the second period. It's I'm speaking about the first 100 years, and Saint Joseph begins the second period of Jesuit art, of Jesuit stay in Macau, and Follery is sent already, is not directly subjected to Lisbon. It's already the subject of the Mission Étrangère. So it's another. It's more with Beijing. It's different. Because here I was interested also to understand the Jesuit art within the Portuguese, more within this relation with the Portuguese crown, with the Portuguese context. And from that point onwards, also for several reasons, Sacra Congregazione de Propaganda Fide, and that so on and so forth, things became different. Okay, And artistically, it's really very different. Well, the St. Paul makes it changes from the late Mannerist language that you see in Goa, okay, to the Baroque language. St. Joseph is a pure Baroque structure. It has nothing to do, Polari has nothing to do with Portugal, okay? He's pure Italian, right? And so it's a little bit different, but it's a very good point, Father.
The church down here, you had mentioned?
No, I mean, artistically, there can be some similarities because of the Italian context, right? Italian, French, but not, that's all.
One more thing. Now that the St. Joseph Seminary was mentioned, there's a very interesting piece, which is the Salus Populi Romani,
Ah, yeah.
that it was circulated. I mean, a copy was sent to most of the Jesuit college around the world. And we have one
Yes.
here in Macau, which
Yes.
is something very special,
Yes.
painted on copper.
Yes. Santa Maria Maggiore.
Do you know if that one was the original from Macau, came from Japan, or
No, I don't
no
think so.
reference?
The Salus Populi Romani was another very important, also Jesuit devotion from General Francesco de Borgia onwards. He had a special devotion for this Marian devotion for this Salus Populi Romano. And it was this is a devotion that circulated a lot in China from Ricci on, and here in Macau they were also produced probably by Giovanni Colla and by some of his students and by some Chinese. Yeah. Yes, because this double face, it happens not very often, but still it can happen. And why? It's a little bit like the flags of the Misericordia or something like that. Why? Because you have to think that many of these pictures were depicted and they were taken like into processions, right? And so double face. It's about art and theater, for instance, or art and, so this double face, it doesn't happen all the time, but it can happen because they were conceived to have also this, to take, I mean, when a new church is built, when a new altar is built, there is some ceremonial, right? And these kind of pictures are especially adequate to be used in this function.
Just a remark on the upcoming publication. So also reacting to this question from Japan. So we are very glad also to announce we prepare a publication by Professor Cristina Osswald on this Jesuit culture and art in Macau, so related to World Heritage. I think this is still a bit missing, so maybe also as a guide for those who are not so familiar with this Jesuit art. Then also the other publication is with David Urrows on Jesuit music pedagogy of the Jesuits in Shanghai in the 19th century, especially François Ravary. And I'm glad also what is now published by Professor Thierry Ménard about the tombstones of the Jesuits in Shanghai. So there are some copies available for 180 patakas. You're welcome to have a look. And maybe a last chance to ask a question. Otherwise, I really, in the name of everybody, also about our online colleagues and friends, I really would like to thank you very much indeed for your support over so many years already. And I think we have still projects ahead. So thank you, Professor Cristina, Osswald, very much indeed.
Thank you to all of you.